our morning session of a topic that can wake up anyone, the dark side of crypto. We are talking here about some challenges that is surrounding the crypto space in general, but not only crypto. We will go a little wider and see surroundings that affects actually all builders, companies, regardless of what you are dealing with today. And we have some great experts with us here, and we're very pleased with that. So I'll just pass the word around so you can do a round of introduction yourself. So you can start, Georg, if you hand over the microphone, Denise.
Thank you very much. Hello, everyone. My name is Georg Harrer. I'm the co-CEO of Bybit EU. Relevant for this topic, I helped build up Bybit EU basically from zero. I was the first employee back in 2024. And among the key focus points was the whole AML, anti-financial crime systems, policies. So yeah, we have been seeing a fair share of regulation about the ongoing questions, but also actual parts of the dark side on or near our platform, and I'm looking forward to sharing our experiences.
Hi, my name is Denise Rudich. I'm CEO of Rudich Advisory. I work across a portfolio of public and private sector engagements. In the crypto space, I set up the first working group on global anti-money laundering, counter-terrorist financing, and the engagement framework with the Financial Action Task Force many, many years ago, which has evolved into the Virtual Assets Contact Group. I'm director of the G7 and G20 research group, so I've been going to summits for 25 years. And I regularly work with regulators, international organizations, fintechs, regtechs, crypto exchanges, et cetera, you name it. I work across the ecosystem as a builder and a fixer. So yeah, delighted to be here. And we met at the Digital Asset Task Force with the Global Coalition to Fight Financial Crime, which I also helped stand up. Thank you. Oh, you have your own.
Yes, we share our own. My name is Raido Saar. I'm a founder and CEO of Comply Once. And this is the company what we founded to solve those problems we are going to talk about today. And in Comply Once, our take is that the problems what are what are surrounding us today in digital world and e-crime, phishing, scams, extortions, you name it.
Police will wait for you outside.
Don't go.
So they are coming from the architectural flaws because we are still using the digital architecture since 90s based on usernames, passwords, email addresses, phone numbers, and those all are now used against us. That's why we have to rebuild the system, the new architecture, so that the human is in the center, and one human equals one KYC file, and KYC information from this file is shared with companies. Today we have vice versa. Every company collects data about you, and then they let it to be stolen, and so on. So we are trying to fix the world, and also I'm the president of Estonian Web3 Chamber. I'm in the crypto space since 2018. So I've seen so many different problems, and now we are getting new ones, and let's try to solve them.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Matthias. Delighted to be here. Really looking forward to the discussion. I'm head of policy at Chainalysis, which is a blockchain analytics company. And that essentially means that we attribute blockchain addresses to make people understand who's actually sitting behind those wallet addresses and how all of these are connected. We work with governments, national security agencies, law enforcement, crypto asset service providers, the full spectrum. And there's sort of like two things that I'd like to highlight today. One is that illicit activity of crypto assets is actually increasing massively. And the second thing is that the transparency of blockchains and the capabilities that analytical tools have nowadays is so impressive that it doesn't just help us to detect and essentially follow the money backwards. We can actually use these systems to prevent fraud from happening. And that's a massive focus that Chainalysis is working on.
Thank you all, and that's Very interesting to hear, because what we also aim to do today is to get some facts and numbers on the table, like Matthias said, to give a fair overview and maybe get rid of some of the myth, but also maybe confirm some of the forward future-looking landscape of how we're dealing with it. So starting with you, Denise, in general, we mentioned many of, call it the overall topics, but when we talk about crypto and fraud, how do you see the current landscape of this one from the bird umbrella perspective?
I believe they say that we are in the golden age of fraud at the moment. Europol has identified it, I think they call it at epidemic levels in the European Union. In terms of like value and how much is lost, like I've heard numbers being thrown around. I think it's between, sorry, I have notes on paper because I'm old school. So again, we've talked, there's numbers like between 100 billion, 700 billion, 50 billion. In the UK, we say it's 100 billion each year lost to fraud, just within one jurisdiction. I think it was Elisa Madrazo de Anda from the Financial Action Task Force. She said, we don't actually know the true number, but it's definitely taking up everybody's time. So it's big. It's growing in scale. It's also emerging as a polycrime. So when you're thinking about fraud, so I see fraud kind of in two ways, kind of from a high level, systemic level. It's either led by organized crime groups. So we've got in Nigeria, let's see, it's a Black Axe group, so they're one of the most notorious organized crime networks. They tend to prey on young men in Nigeria who are either looking to kind of have clout, be able to feed their families, be able to buy nice cars, etc. And they've set up scam compounds, effectively, similar to what we've seen in Cambodia. They give them scripts. They basically give them a startup kit to be fraudsters, where they then are able to tailor use AI, Gen AI generally, tailor information either through phishing, go on Tinder or go on Bumble even as well, where you have to swipe left as a woman. And they start relationships with individuals. Some of these kids are as young as 10 years old, right? And for that, the way that Gen AI has evolved these types of scams is that they're providing them with not just culturally appropriate language for the jurisdiction that they're targeting. So in the US, you're being targeted as an individual, man or woman, whatever it is, in language that is more American-based. In Europe, Germany, the language is in German. It's also being targeted to your age. So, young people speak different than older people. So 6, 7, still don't understand what that is. But that's, there are also targeting young kids as well to be able to scam them. But then the Black Axe is also involved in drug trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking, corruption. Like, they are one of the most notorious, biggest organized crime groups in the world. If you look at what happened in Cambodia with the Prince Group, they set up this multinational enterprise. They were operating like a large company. They operated in over 30 countries. They had dozens of corporations. They human trafficked people into their scam compounds. And we're talking about hundreds of thousands. I think it was 100,000 people that they liberated, or they said, they try to rehome or send back to their countries. And they were, again, same thing, using scripts, offering, it's either romance scams, investment scams, I think initial offering, coin offerings, drops, et cetera, just to be able to access your account. So those are where you had the victims were also perpetuating the crime to create more victims. With the Black Axis group, you had just people who are looking to create, money for themselves and their families. And then you get to what I call the even darker side, which is now that you have fraud as a hybrid warfare threat, right? Where you have Russia using communications channels, social media channels to try to attract people to be able to support with sanctions evasion and laundering of whatever it is that they have their hands in to be able to kind of support the war economy, and the use of A5, A7, Garantex, things like that. Those are exchanges that have been sanctioned. Then you've also got North Korea, the Lazarus Group. I mean, those guys are a formidable adversary. They have been around for many years. They use traditional, not just fraud tactics like cybercrime and whatnot, but they're using again, a combination of social engineering, AI, synthetic identity theft and fraud to become employees in your exchanges. So please make sure that you try to, well, I don't know if try to meet people, try to figure out how to, and maybe this is where you can help us. How do you validate an online identity where a deepfake has been used and a synthetic identity has been created, where you've had multimodal language overlaid, and where you're able to kind of move your head up and down and around using, children from Stranger Things, that have been created and evolved in a way that's so difficult to challenge the tech that we have right now, to stop them as a target. So anyhow, it's huge. It's a problem. Nobody knows how much it is. It is going to become a priority, probably, for the Financial Action Task Force in the next 2 years. It hasn't been formally announced, but that is what the rumors are. And at the G7, G20 level, it's also going to probably be, well, I mean, I've been advocating for it. That doesn't mean anything, but others have been advocating for it as well. So
what I hear in general is that it's all about who is actually behind it, who is the sender. And it's not then any more about, call it just trust per se, but we actually need to verify it to be sure about it. Mm-hmm. Because you can trust lots of people, but we have seen within the crypto industry that some exchanges, they trusted someone internally, thought it was okay, and still it was a hack coming in. So in this matter, I think it leads over to you, Rido, of the identity side of things. How is it possible at all to go from just trust in general, where we see error by error happens, to actually verify when it comes to the onboarding or the process of just interacting with the ecosystem, either internally or externally?
Yes, exactly what Denise just said, that if we are keeping this onboarding tied to the process, what happens on the gates for the company, this IDV, exactly what you discovered, you can move your head. Actually, I can move your head if I have your picture and I want to onboard as you. Those applications were available in app stores only 2 years ago for free. This was onboarding aid was one. Can you imagine? So what is our expectations if on the door of the company where you have to verify yourself because the law says that you need to? And of course, we have to fight AML. By the way, AML efficiency is 0.02% globally. If we compare the money spent, which is 500 billions, and seized assets, it makes 0.02% efficiency. So it doesn't work. Let's be honest. What AML people say, they say that if we wouldn't do it, it would be even worse. But all the goals that were set in 2002 for AML, anti-money laundering and anti-terrorist financing, they have not been achieved. And again, they say if we didn't do it, it would have been even worse. I'm not sure about it, but I know that human trafficking is continuing, drugs, weapons, everything continues. And today we are in the era. The golden era is for them, for us, this is the turning point. We have to decide how we continue. And that's why, as I shortly said in the beginning, that we have to put human in the center, because if one human is in the center who can share in a trusted way his personal KYC data, and those companies can check that data exists, like we do it in Estonia. Estonia, we have national registries. No data moves over the internet. If bank needs to control or check my data, they go to the source, they get confirmation that such data exists and it's valid, and that's enough. But what we do today, because we are like blind men in the dark room, we don't trust any document, but somehow, if you have to present your source of funds documents, they accept screenshots. Tell me, what is the value of screenshot? In AI era, when I say that put those numbers in, and they say, but we don't have anything better. This is complete bullshit. We have tools today, but the problem is that everybody are trying to solve the problem by themselves, and then there is a money question. IDV companies, they are fighting for the market, which is about 170 billion euros. And of course, this is big money. They don't care about the result. They care about the market share. and greed is again working against us. So that's why we have to find a solution, actually, but we are already building what is based on, if you have some kind of digital identity which is trusted in national level, you can use it to activate your comply once application, and then you can use this, which is based on the best Estonian digital identity experience. No usernames, no passwords, no email addresses. You just click login with comply once, you scan QR code, you enter PIN 1, 4 digits, and this activates your digital identity certificates, which is working on the highest level of cryptography. And you're in and you're protected, and this cannot be fished away from you. It's in your phone. Part of the cryptographic key is always with you. And as we don't have username, there is no possibility for the fraudsters to engineer out your PIN code while they are entering your username already somewhere. So username, weak point. Password, of course, we all know this. Let's forget about it. Two-factor authentication doesn't work because they are just stuffing it in, and one moment you lose control about everything. Single sign-on, like Google, Apple, Meta, anything. If you lose the one you are using to log into everywhere else, you lost everything. And you will not get it back because Meta has hundreds of billions of users. They have no ability to deal with every case separately. AI will tell you that we will not block this account because it's not going against our community standards. Nice standards they have, right? So we have to take it back to the human level so that one human can control its own data to log in and present it to relevant parties.
So in other words, there could be solutions coming up that currently is not in place. But the current system, Matthias, if we are to look into, call it, what we have heard now of quite a few challenges in general for society, if we are to put some numbers on that one, I know that Chainalysis has creating continuously great reports, but recently you have some fairly fresh numbers on everything from, call it, the illicit or the monitored illicit activity that you have disclosed, which we often hear is around 1%, etc. But also in relation to that, could you please give us some perspectives of some of the key findings from these reports that I think would be very interesting for the audience to put the numbers into the perspective?
Yeah, sure. Thank you very much. Yeah. So every year we've got our flagship report, which is called the Crypto Crime Report. And we've done the figures for last year. Obviously, we look at on-chain transactions where we have got connections to illicit activity. And the thing that we've seen for the data covering last year is that there has been a massive increase in illicit activity. And when I say a massive increase, I really mean a massive increase. We're talking about an estimate of $154 billion worth of transactions that are linked to illicit wallets. That's an increase of 160% compared to last year. So it's really massive. There's a few reasons for it, and I'll probably highlight like the key things that to me stand out. The one thing is that the illicit ecosystem within crypto assets has evolved over the years from, cyberpunks to like more professional crime networks. But now we're in the age, and Denise already mentioned that, of nation-state actors really using cryptocurrencies systematically. And the two things, and you already mentioned them too, that stand out here is Russia, for example, because the sanctions are deployed quite holistically. They've got hardly any access to US dollars, and they've got sanctioned exchanges that have even been taken down. Now in February they launched a stablecoin backed with ruble, and it was a massive hit right from the beginning. Since February, they transacted more than $94 billion worth of transactions in that specific ruble stablecoin, which essentially is state-backed, sanctions evasion. So you've got that part. You've got the North Korean hackers, which are impressive in what they do in terms of phishing, Web 2 attacks, Web 3 attacks. The North Koreans have actually managed to steal more than $2 billion last year. The total amount of stolen funds is nearly $3.5 billion last year. And obviously, like the big chunk was the Bybit hack in February, obviously. The interesting part here is that North Korean hackers seem to be attacking exchanges much more now. only 20% of all the funds that were stolen come from personal wallets, simply because there is more to gain. So that's the one part. The second part is scams. We definitely live in like a scamdemic at the moment. The lower bound estimate that we have for illicit activity related to scams is around 17 billion for last year. And that's a massive increase from the 12 billion we've had the year before. And there's also a few things that stand out here. The one part that I'd like to mention is that the payments made to scam clusters has increased by an average of 250%. So there's more funds from individuals flowing into scam clusters or scammers. And one of the reasons is the really using AI as a tool to trick people into certain transactions. And when you look at scams that are AI-enabled versus scams that are not AI-enabled, and we do this because we can see that, for example, a scammer is leveraging AI technology because you can buy everything online in darknet markets, you pay with crypto, and you scam people with crypto. So all the scam activities that are connected to AI vendors are 4.5 times more effective than those who just scam people using other means of scam technology. So that's I think really interesting. And the main scam that stands out from last year is impersonation scams. We've seen an explosion of 1,400% in terms of value stolen using that sort of transaction. So that's sort of like the second thing that I wanted to highlight. And the third thing, which also brings me to maybe a slightly more positive message, is that when you look at the overall assets that are used for scams, it's mainly stablecoins. 84% of all the illicit activity that we see on chain is in stablecoins. And this makes a lot of sense because they are much more value stable. They are much better accessible. They cross borders in an instant. They settle instantaneously. So scammers like them much more than other assets, for example. Bitcoin is still the medium of exchange for some types of illicit activity, mainly around ransomware, cyber hacks. But it's really all about stablecoins. And that's like the massive opportunity for us to actually leverage new technologies and centralized stablecoin issues, because they can essentially freeze and burn tokens wherever they are and whoever is transacting with them. I don't know, we'll probably go into like more technical stuff around analytics, but at this point, the only thing that I want to say is that analytical capabilities have moved on so much that it is even possible for stablecoin issuers to oversee transactions they're not directly part of. And that gives them a real superpower, so much information that they could leverage. But at the moment, we don't really have the legal or regulatory guardrails around making this actually a feasible option.
So what you're saying, we shouldn't fare CBDCs, we should fare stablecoins then, for the monitoring purpose. No, that's just an anecdote on the side of a joke to all crypto bros who is in the room. But talking about crypto in general, because on your side, Georg, as Matthias mentioned, you have had the hard-learned experience of actually experiencing a hack that was quite significant. But in running such a large crypto exchange also, it comes with surroundings of an ecosystem that is, of course, not only, call it, bad as we heard it here. It's not only about, frauds all the time. You run it in a legal way, it's compliant, you're registered, you have the MiCA license and all of that part. And at least my experience from working in this industry for more than 10 years is that when an exchange is actually getting ordinary compliance people in from the banking financial world, they actually say, wow, why didn't I have these tools when I was at the bank? And that's referring to typically chain analysis or on the monitoring tools, and they can see actually real-time transactions. And they can not only then just monitor them, but they can instantly also, like you said, block them, stop them. So there's something more about the system that is also underlaying the mantra that we might build in the right direction. So it would be interesting to hear from you, Georg, in terms of how you deal with the compliance issues in general and what you see of a pro-con challenges surrounding the quite challenge of running an exchange in 2026.
Yeah, thank you. So this is a good point you mentioned. I'm thinking back when I started Back in 2024, the task was to build up the EU headquarters in Vienna of Bybit, get the MiCA license to be fully licensed in the EU, which we are since May 2025. And if you look very closely legally of what is the Bybit.com global platform, it's run by a company incorporated in the Seychelles. And originally I thought, okay, this is going to be, from the ground up, a lot of, building the basics. But in fact, most of the tools and policies were already in place out of Bybit's own interest to not be known as and not foster illicit activities. Because as a crypto exchange, you want happy customers who stay on your platform. You want to attract customers, and you certainly don't attract customers, or at least not the customers that we're looking into, if you're known as a platform supporting scammers, if you're known as a platform who doesn't react to scams, hacks, etc. But now looking at what we've done, I think we already heard here a very good summary that there's so many levels to it. So it starts with the actual hacks, where you mentioned the infamous Bybit hack, where it is just on a very fundamental level, always a cat and mouse game between being on the forefront of what is technologically and also from an organizational standpoint possible. So for example, of course, you could split your key into 25 keys and you build 20 different vaults around the world. But if you then need to make a wallet transfer and you need to get all those keys, that would just not be, you can't run an exchange like this. So there's always a trade-off between how safe you want to be versus making it actually work. The second layer is, and I think this is a very good pain point you mentioned, onboarding, KYC, so knowing and making sure it is actually your customer, which, if you think about it, is insane. I think we already implement top-of-the-line products and services like, I think SumSup is probably known to everyone. I think many use it, and on the back end also tools like we use Chainalysis and others. But the pure process of onboarding that you, in this day and age, still have to take a picture of your ID, that you, and with the ID, it's actually relatively easy, because if even on the European level, if you look into proof of address, it's completely insane. In Austria, we are lucky because we have a register. We're not as lucky, obviously, as Estonia or other countries who fully do this on a digital way, but in other jurisdictions, you have to send, for example, a utility bill, because there's simply not a register. And also this is not just a process which is prone to being used by people with illicit intentions, but for us, it's also a process where we lose a lot of customers on the way. And of course, it's a big cost factor for something that adds no additional value to anyone, because I am who I am, my customer is who he is, and this process never adds anything to it, because it's just about ensuring what is already there. So I also hope that, at least on the European level, I'm not sure when, maybe in the next 5 years, I think there's a couple of interesting projects. We will go into having at least an universally accepted ID, plus in the future maybe universally accepted proof of address, proof of where you work, assets, etc. Yes, and then the third point, I think we also live now in at a turning point. We were one of the first exchanges who got their MiCA license. You can get a MiCA license since 2025. And it's also, I can now rightfully say, we are governed by the same, or many of the same compliance standards as banks, especially AML and also DORA, which is, if you want to sum it up, IT security. Plus, and this is what you mentioned, from a technological perspective, crypto is actually in many cases much easier and much better to track if you know what you're looking for and if you actually have the capabilities. As you said, very often you can't do anything because you're a law enforcement agency, and unless you have a court order or something, or if it's outside your jurisdiction, your hands are tied. But as an exchange, we actually can see a lot, and also we see much more compared to fiat transactions. Yeah, but still I think especially on the law enforcement side, on the side of enforcing cross-border court orders, reacting fast. This is also, I think, it was said that crypto scams are happening twice or three times as fast as usual fiat money scams. This is certainly a challenge because also for us, very often we get a court order, an inquiry, and then we see, yeah, thank you for letting us know, but this happened 2 weeks ago, and the funds are long gone.
Indeed, and you mentioned also some keywords there. And of course, if you are an exchange with the size of you both have a team, you have the money, you have the organization to take care of things like the DORA, the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Not all people are maybe familiar with it, but it's an extended umbrella over MiCA. So MiCA is not one thing, as many may think. It's just a little piece in the EU puzzle there. So it means that you have to ensure who your third-party vendors are and ensure IT security and other elements and who you purchase services from. So from now on, you cannot just have an agreement in a Discord chat and it's a pseudonymous meme coin of a frog who is your vendor. You actually need to identify the person and go on. So what I actually see from also being a board member at several exchanges is that when you apply for the MiCA, they say, great MiCA license, best we have seen, but we have some questions towards the DORA. So we just need to hold you a little bit back. So as far as our experiences is just to see, call it the EU framework of how that restricts maybe little innovation. Because if you're a startup, you cannot afford to necessarily have a full legal team in it. So how's your view in general now, as call it the last question leading up to that one, of if you had one ask from policymakers to keep Europe attractive and also safe for retail and also business users in 2026, what would that be?
Yeah. So I must emphasize this is a very important point. I've been saying this at other conferences to the press. DORA is much needed, but if you look at it, even for us, it seems too big. And I keep joking that the MiCA license was the easy part. The real hard part was DORA, and the almost impossible part was getting a bank account. But it really was, I think, from our policies, we had around 70 policies to start with. More than half of it was DORA related. It triggered costs in the amount of several millions. And when you look at DORA, as I said, for a big bank, for a big financial corporations, those rules are suitable. But compared to other European framework legislation, there's no gradually easing you into. So for example, if you are a small payment service provider or account information service, you will literally the same standards apply to you as to a systemic relevant bank. And I think this is not okay because also I don't think a small startup needs the same level of protection as a systemically relevant bank. So my wish would be to the regulators, to the governments, make sure that there is some exemptions, some easing into, especially DORA, to make sure that small companies can start growing, and then maybe later when they become bigger, when they have more customers, that they are captured by the rules gradually until they reach the full extent.
Yeah, I'll pass it on now as just your one ask from a policymaker in general to make it more easy and safe. So Denise, going forward all the way, ending in you, Matthias.
I'm like, I think we should give it to the former regulator first before.
No, go ahead.
Okay, so I think my ask is understand what you are regulating, why you are regulating it, and the actual threat to your country. So I do a lot of capacity building with Council of Europe and OSCE. So set up the risk-based regulatory framework for VASPs in Kosovo, national risk assessments, et cetera. One of the things that I do find whenever I do talk to not just regulators, but and also make sure that your businesses in your country understand why you are asking what you are asking of them. So I think breaking all of this down, when I do go and do capacity building, one of the things that generally identify is that people, not just regulators, but law enforcement and financial intelligence units and tax authorities as well, because they should be taxing this. It's a lot of value. You want to go back to society. Might not actually understand the products that they are regulating. So one of my hats, we're building out a product risk assessment tool to help people follow the money, to be able to understand how financial products in TradFi, but also fintech and in the DeFi space actually operate. Because when I was head of policy for RBS, we would often have no idea what the businesses were asking us to approve. And I'm like, can you draw me a pretty picture so I understand? So that's what we're trying to do. And we've been asked by some of the regulators to make sure that we're getting some of the crypto products in there. So what are you regulating? Why are you regulating? Understand the risk that these products, this industry poses to your country. I think Estonia is an interesting example in that they did do a national risk assessment. They then closed down. You were in the working group. So they then closed down 3,000 licenses, was it? Something like that? Over 1,000?
We had 2,200 something licenses, companies, 4,000 licenses.
Yeah.
And now we have 36.
So they definitely scaled back once they understood the risk, because it was challenging. And then the other thing, well, it was challenging to regulate. They were also getting looked at by the FATF and regulators at the EU level. Moneyval, yep, the FATF style FSRB. Anyhow, can't say what it is right now in my head. And then make sure that, again, your crypto exchanges actually know why they're being regulated. So the whole point of anti-money laundering regulation is to identify and stop societal harm, to be able to gain evidence for prosecution and be able to get the assets back and repatriate it to the victims, right? What you're doing for KYC is you're protecting your business, you're protecting society. What you're doing with transaction monitoring is you're following the money to figure out where it's gone. What you're doing when you report something is you're providing the evidence and the intelligence that's essential for them to bring criminal action to be able to then get the money back. I mean, it takes a long time. It can take 10 years for a financial crime case. And so that's why we do it, not just to be really annoying. And so when you talk to founders, when you talk to regtechs and fintechs and crypto exchanges, I mean, a lot of founders are technologists. They don't necessarily think about anti-money laundering and the harm to society and proliferation financing and counter-terrorist financing and all of those things. So kind of that educational level is really important, but then also education with TradFi, traditional finance. So in Estonia, I was brought in to help set up kind of like a level of understanding between the fintech space, the TradFi space, and the crypto space, so that actually you understood the risk. The risk to a bank, there's a difference between having an Omni account in a bank and pass through funding from a crypto exchange to providing like a corporate account providing operational costs to an exchange. So back to understand the risk, understand what the product is being used for, and then just put the guardrails that you need around it without overcooking it. Sorry, that was 3 things. I apologize. Thank you.
It's my bad, because I know there's lots of other things, but I think it's a clear illustration that I need to rephrase my question now, that if there was one only thing, cautious of time now. So now, even though we know it's more, and it's very valid points, of course, of the challenges ahead. So, Rido, one thing now as we're running a little over time.
Yes. Everything you said, it makes perfect sense, except it doesn't.
Oh my gosh, I can't wait to hear this.
We have to sit down, experts from the industry, from blockchain analytics, from policymakers, and we have to put on the table what we want to achieve, because today's KYC, AML, CTF is not achieving it. 0.02% is not a joke.
I am not arguing
Yeah.
that.
So let's sit, we need to lay down exactly like you said, why we are doing what and what we want to achieve. And then we have to put the procedures, and we came from DORA to this. And of course, DORA is so slow that risks are changing while they are auditing. So it doesn't make any sense neither. So let's see that we are living in a different world now. Let's see in the future. Let's not play with those toys from 20 years ago. We have to have new toys. Otherwise, we lose this fight.
Matthias,
Yeah,
last famous words.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to say. Like there were a few points, so I'll try to distill it and make it just one. Hopefully, also a little bit shorter. So, proportionality, I think, is really, really important. The one thing that I would urge regulators to do, and when you look at DORA, MiCA, whatever it might be, it's typically heavily inspired by TradFi regulations, then copy-pasted, which is not always a bad thing. I know we talked about this yesterday, and everyone was like, it's just copy-pasted. That's not a bad thing. Do not reinvent the wheel, but make sure you understand the differences in regulation. And then my one point, to make it really short, would be that regulators should also understand that they're regulating a different industry using different tools. And that's the main part. And the problem that I see with regulators is they typically don't really have the resources to first understand and then also use the tools that are available. Because if they understood that they can have 24/7 due diligence on every supervised entity, understanding risk, transactions much better than ever before, then it's a no-brainer to make sure that the industry is actually moving to new rails. That's the short version. I can also give you a 1 hour.
I don't need to put on any more coins to do that. So, no, thank you all for sharing. And I think as to summarize it in some matter, even though we hear it's quite significant numbers in scale of what it affects, we should also bear in mind that also leads to solving of cases, actually. It's a tool that is being used because of the monitoring functions, and that leads also further into what Georg said about the whole of the infrastructure that is fully monitoring the landscape. So that...
wait a second. One number is not said out yet. The number you were looking for is 9.5 trillion. Globally, damages from e-crime, cybercrime. It was an article I read a few weeks ago. It's about the last year. So it's almost, if this e-crime would have been an economy, it would be third largest economy in the world after US and China. There is something to think about.
And that leads us to that there is a quite huge business potential in this industry in general. That leads us naturally over to the next talk, where you can actually see how we can gain the insights from K33 and Torbjørn Bull Jensen, who will give an overview of how you can actually put Bitcoin into an ecosystem where all of this landscape is taken care of in a safe environment, and where you can also make some business out of the whole thing. So I encourage all of you to stay in the room. If you need air and a coffee, we will take, of course, a 2-minute short break here to stretch the legs so you can survive, but we will start briefly in 2-3 minutes. So thank you all.